was born just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in our upstairs farmhouse apartment on my oldest brother's 5th birthday. I was born at home, and it was deliberate, not an emergency. I was child number 4. There's Stephen, the oldest, then Heather, then Tim, and me, Lindsay, and then my parents, Jean and Carol. I officially put us over the limit for that house, so we moved into the federally subsidized housing projects in Milwaukee. We were poor. When I was 3, my sister Erica was born. She's the last kid in our family. From a very young age, I sported a buzz cut. This because I twirled, knotted, and pulled out my hair. This is an anxiety disorder called trichotillomania. And it eventually led to huge bald spots. When I was 5, I had basically that monk thing, you know, they have a giant, it was like that. I think in one of those, you can't really tell because I'm wearing a black headband in that one over there, but behind that, just bald, just a huge bald spot. And with little kids, they can't tell you exactly what's going on in their head or what their anxiety is about. But my parents' marriage was not a happy one. My dad had an affair, and later on we found out about that, and apparently it went on for years. And sometime around age 7 or 8, I was sexually abused by my oldest brother. When I was 8, we moved to Oregon to be near my mom's side of the family. And her parents, my grandpa, he was the pastor of the church that we started going to there. That's him with his first great-grandchild. That was the only one he actually got to meet before he died. And then my grandma there with her 4 living children. Her daughter Sue, my Aunt Sue, died when she was 26 in a car accident. But there's my mom, who taught Sunday school. She was kind of like the tater tots lady for most of my life. And then my Aunt Donna was a pastor's wife, my grandma, pastor's wife. My Uncle Steve was a missionary in China and then now Thailand. And then my Aunt Linda was a teacher and then worked in the school district, but then now she's a pastor, a women's pastor, some kind of pastor in her church. So I've been churchy since I was a fetus. And that's just been a big part of my life. And I grew up serving alongside my mother in church, and I just didn't stop. So when we moved to Oregon, my mom had a daycare in our house, and in many ways, these extra babies and preschoolers felt like extra siblings. Through daycare connections, we ended up taking in 3 homeless teens, a homeless couple, homeless women with their kids, all at different times. And with 5 kids already in our family, my middle school and high school years felt really crowded, and I felt like I didn't get enough attention, which, maybe skip to one more. One more? Yeah, which led to me really enjoying the attention of the stage. This is me in my theater group. I was in a lot of plays as mostly the main comedic role. I tend to get the funny ones, and I killed. I was really good at it. And then also I got a lot of solos in choir, and I just anything on the stage. Okay, and then you can go back to the other one. And then also, whatever I lacked in my family at home, God more than made up for in my church family, particularly in my youth pastor, Greg. That is a picture of us on a mission trip, high school group. We went to Las Vegas, and we did street evangelism, which is awkward, and homeless ministry and stuff. But all of the boys, they called home first, but they all bleached their hair, which if you have brown hair first and you bleach it, it looks terrible. Don't do it. Don't do it, Joel. Don't. It just looks bad. It's not cool. Anyway, and then that's my friend Val and I. We were both volunteering at the VPS at church. And then that's just me, my dad, and my brother Tim. And Tim was one of my best friends most of my life growing up. And so both Val and Tim being best friends, just having a best friend was just really important to me for a lot of my life. So that kind of comes back later. But so then after high school, I went to George Fox University for college. And I had problems with depression starting in high school, which runs in my dad's side of the family. But this led to a crisis of faith in college where I broke up with God, how I thought of it. And I called my dad to tell him, thinking he'd be on my side, because I knew that he'd had the same kind of doubts about like God being good. Because if he could heal us from our depression and he just wouldn't, then that's not, God can't be good. And so I thought, okay, I'll call Dad and tell him that I'm done with God. And when I called him, he said, "Oh, hon." And I was like, oh, that's not a good thing. Okay, and then he said, "You can run away from God as long as you want. And sometime you'll turn around and you'll bruise your nose on his belt buckle." And I was like, what does that mean? And that was a very weird daddish way of saying that at some point you'll turn around and God will still be right there. And of course, God is very tall. So his belt buckle will be right there. And yeah, I had to have him clarify because that was weird. I was like, what? And so that rang very true to the God I, of course, knew very well and was like, oh, you're so right. Deflated my rebellion immediately. So I broke up with God for all of one day. And I was back. But I was like, okay, God, I'm still really hurt and angry and confused, but I'm here, and I guess, like, you're still my God. I don't get it. And that was where I stayed for a lot of years after that. But I'm sure I learned things at George Fox. Mostly I just remember having a lot of fun in between being depressed. That was me. I worked in the library. That's me behind the stage, or behind the scenes stage. Everything's a stage. Behind the scenes at the library. And I also was a tour guide at George Fox. Then after George Fox, I did an internship with World Impact, a missions organization focused on inner city church planting. See, again, I had a fierce allegiance to the Lord, even when things made no sense. So I went and worked did an internship with that organization. The church plant was in Watts, which is in South Central Los Angeles. So that first picture was of my Wednesday evening Bible club, and then this is my preschool Sunday school class. And then that's me in the house, or on the porch of the house that I stayed in when I was living there. And me being alone on that porch is very symbolic of my experience there. It was so lonely being a missionary in the city. So lonely. It was a miserable experience. And that, among other things, really convinced me that I'm not supposed to be a missionary. So after my year in Los Angeles, I came back to Oregon to go into the Masters of Counseling program at Western Seminary. And I also started going to a young adult church group with my brother. And it was his friend's Ray's group that he found out about. And that was where I met Ray. And Ray and I dated for the first year and a half that I was in grad school. I thought we would get married. I tried hard to make it work, even when he was a little too controlling. and we were making wrong choices together, and I felt like I had to be small to make him happy. In the end, he dumped me, which was good, because God told me Ray wasn't the guy for me, but I told God I didn't have the strength to break my own heart. And it did break my heart, even though it was for the best. The best. God used this time of brokenness to show more of himself to me, and I began to truly fall in love with God, not only having a fierce allegiance to him. He also blessed me with sweet opportunities for adventures that you only get when you're single in your 20s. So.
Then we're going to switch to me for a little bit. So I was actually born, while my parents were down here in Oregon, so I was actually born in Portland, but then we went right back up to Alaska. That's me at camp. And I was actually a bit of a surprise. My parents weren't expecting me, but I showed up anyways, and I think everyone was delighted. I actually had a great time growing up, especially being a small kid in Alaska. Alaska's just a fun place for a kid. You don't notice the darkness. It's just nothing but fun and outdoor activities. It's me and my dog Ginger, and with a red hat. I grew up usually wearing a red hat. Everywhere I went, I was just, I liked wearing hats. A little bit of snow and things. And a few more pictures of Alaska. And yeah, airplane. I learned how to cook pretty early on, because I figured out at that time, you can see I was skinny back then, before I learned how to cook. But then I learned if you learn how to cook, then you can actually enjoy the things that you really enjoy anytime you want if you can just make it. So another thing I love growing up, Disney stuff. You'll usually see me with an Eeyore shirt or some sort of Disney character. And when I was also around 8 years old, we moved to Oregon and got involved doing shot put, thinking that I was a fat guy, even though I wasn't quite yet, but I knew what was happening in the future, I guess. One thing that I think was super influencing on me growing up was just my family. My parents, I watched them living out the gospel growing up, and so I never felt like it was something where they were forcing Christianity on me. It was just, that was what you do. And so I had great influences watching my dad as a leader, and also my brother was also a great one of, he would make mistakes before me, then tell me, hey, I just made this mistake, don't do it. So I got all the benefits of that. Also had some great friends as influences. Me and my first moose at, it's either 11 or 12, when we got the first moose. And I still like Disney. Another huge part of growing up was working at the camp up in Alaska. It's me, my buddy AJ, and that's actually Drew down there in the corner. The camp, I started off as a counselor there and eventually became program director. And yeah, at the time, I thought that Alaska, like somehow Alaska was going to be part of my path in life. I figured, okay, I'm going to do this. So I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll get a master's in counseling, then come back up to be a missionary. But it turns out that wasn't the plan. Then college time, that was a fun trip with my brother, getting a moose. During college, had some time of like a little bit questioning, like, okay, is God real? And in the end, I had to come to the conclusion, yeah, he totally is. And I also learned I love attention. I'll do pretty much anything for attention, even learning how to fly. It's one of my favorites. And then after that, I ended up going to grad school. So, and then...
Picture. Okay, so, like I said, in the time after Ray, I really enjoyed a lot of good friendships. Once I wasn't spending all my time with him, I had all this time to be with friends. And so you'll see this is a lunch table in grad school. And I hope I'm not blocking too much. There in the middle is me, and then there's this guy sitting next to me. You might recognize him. And then next to him is Priscilla, a lovely friend. So Priscilla let me stay the night at her house on Mondays because I had class at Western all day Mondays until like 11 p.m. and then I had a morning class on Tuesday, really early, and I lived in Salem and the school was in Portland. So rather than drive home and drive back, she just let me stay over, which was great because Priscilla and I and her roommate Becca, who also was in the counseling program, we got to have a little slumber party with girl talk every Monday night. And guess who we talked about? Blake, and other guys too, but other stuff, all kinds of things. But part of our girl talk was about Blake. And one of the things that we talked about was just like, what's his deal? Because Blake confused me. He sat at this table, usually, not with this table, but with these kids, because I always thought of people as kids because we were all in school still, but people were like all different ages and we were fully grown adults, so it's weird. Anyway, so he'd sit with these students who were just not my kind of people, it seemed like. Like, there was like one girl who had like blue streaks in her hair, and I was like, And then there was like some people who had like tattoos, and I was like, not really my thing. And then Blake, being a fat guy, I kind of wondered, like, maybe he has like low self-esteem. And I just, which if you know him, can't be further from the truth. And so I just kind of thought, like, they probably like weren't really like my people. It didn't really seem like we would fit together, like fit in. But then he started like coming over and sitting like with people that I would hang out with, and he seemed normal. And I was like, okay, I don't get it. You don't make sense. So when we would talk about Blake, I just would say like, I'm just curious. I'm just curious about him. I don't know. And she's like, well, do you like him? I was like, I don't like him. Like, I don't have a crush on him. I'm just curious. So she said, can I tell him that? And I was like, I guess, like if he asks or something, but I just don't tell him I like him. Just like, I'm just curious. And so she had drinks with Blake and his friend Greg, because they were out having beers in between classes at some point. And
yeah, so Priscilla asked me and Greg, she's like, I know all the girls at Western. How about you tell me what girls you might be interested in, and I'll tell you if that's a good idea or not. And she goes, are there any girls that you're interested in? And I said, no. And then my buddy Greg goes, yeah, there is. And I was like, who? And he looks at me, and then he goes, Cora. And that was our code name for Lindsay. Long story, has to do with Avatar: The Last Airbender, another cartoon. And so then I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm a bit interested in Lindsay. And then Priscilla just goes, well, that seems like something that you could pursue. Wouldn't that be a good idea to pursue that? And we're like, I thought you were going to give us all the details here. And so then
I got a Facebook message from Blake, not a phone call, even though he had my number, which I was like, really?
Well, and I'd gotten her number in class because we had to share numbers, so I think it'd be weird to like call someone when they had to give you your number. I figured I didn't actually earn the number yet, so therefore, since we were actually connected on Facebook, that would make more sense.
Whatever. Anyway, so I got a Facebook message that said, I want to go to the state fair, and since you live in Salem, I wondered if you want to go with me. Which is like, so it's about geography, not about you actually want to hang out with me. But I was like, okay, this is the lamest ask out ever, but okay, yes, I would like to go with you because, again, I'm still curious. He's a very intriguing fellow. So I said yes, and that was our first date, and it was intriguing.
I found out very early on the date that, because we were walking in there, and I said, well, this is kind of a silly question to ask this late, but you like rides, right? And she responds, no, I don't do rides. And then I started panicking because I was like, well, then what do you do at the fair? And she's like, well, there's booths. I'm like, there are? She actually did ride a couple rides with me, though.
Yeah, and it was scary. It was so scary. I screamed my head off. There was like a little 8-year-old that was sitting next to us, and he was like, it's okay. It's fine. I'm like, it's not Brides scare me. Anyway,
So eventually we started dating.
which was difficult for me to do because I had been so heartbroken over Ray, so it was hard to trust. And God really had to tell me, I'm trying to give you this good thing and you're not letting me. So then
Yeah.
I did.
Dated, and after a while of dating, then we realized that it'd be probably a good idea to, graduated, hung out more. There we go.
Good idea
Then
to
finally,
get engaged.
decided to get engaged. While we were dating, is this time when I
Yeah.
I'd noticed some symptoms that she had, some neurological things, because there was a few different ones that, some tingly things, but plus a lot of
Yeah.
other ones that I was putting together. I'm like, I think she has MS. And at the time, we
And
didn't know
I was
for
sent
sure.
to get an MRI, and I had a non-specific abnormality in my brain. And the neurologist was just like, at this point, we just don't know enough, so we'll just wait and see if anything else happens. And so for now, just don't worry about it. So that was my goal, was to just don't worry about it. And his goal was to research everything on the internet, which he did.
Yeah. Then 1 month before the wedding, we were getting married in November, actually November 15th, so tomorrow.
16.
Yeah. And there's 16? No, it's the 15th.
16.
Oh, okay. Close enough. Either way. 1 month before the wedding, actually, Lindsay ended up having what we thought was a stroke at the time. She lost control of her whole body on the right side, and we ended up taking her to the hospital where they ended up doing a spinal tap, and then finally confirmed MS. And we were doing premarital with Gary Bashirs at the time, and we went in to see him, and one of the questions he asked Lindsay was, are you willing to be a burden on Blake for the rest of your life? To which I remember her just saying flat out no. And
I remember that I just took off the ring and held it in my hand for a while, which I tended to do when I was feeling nervous about the whole idea. But yeah, I might have did say no.
And we differ on our stories on this next part, much like the day that we got married.
But I am certain about this.
I remember this being 12 days, like at least almost 2 weeks before I got an answer.
It was that day. So we were driving home and we stopped off at Burger King because I had to go to the bathroom really bad. So we stopped at a Burger King and I went in the bathroom and I was crying and praying. And once again, I heard very clearly God say, I'm trying to give you this good thing and you're not letting me. And I was like, okay, you're right. And I put the ring on and I went out to the car again and I told him, okay, I'll marry you.
So we took it married. And we actually had a good time. We weren't sure if Lindsay was even going to be able to walk down the aisle, but she was able to, so that was awesome. And for our reception, though, she was getting...
I had neuropathy in my feet, so like painful pins and needles on the bottom of my feet.
Yeah, so we stayed seated, and then everyone came to us while we sat there during that. And our honeymoon, if you can guess, we ended up going to Disneyland. And this is actually the only picture of us that we took the entire time. We're not very good at selfies. That's one thing that we've learned. We're not very good millennials because we never take pictures of ourselves. These are two of the only pictures. I think we found 4 pictures post-wedding of ourselves total. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What else?
We're going to talk about having MS.
Oh yeah.
Becoming a counselor.
So I graduated from the counseling program just a little bit after we got married, and then started working and worked for 2.5 years with MS, but got pretty bad, and my fatigue became bad enough that I was pretty much disabled from the fatigue from MS and had to stop working. And it can be very easy to focus on all of the things that I can't do because of MS, because of the fatigue. But instead, I choose to focus on all of the things that I already did when my body was working good, I did a whole lot of cool stuff. I went to Europe. I did Amsterdam to Paris when I was in college. So did a backpacking trip. I danced. That's not actually dancing. That's just me being goofy, making fun of a statue. But I did so much dancing and so much being goofy. And I still get to dance a little bit, but man, it tires me out so fast. And I climbed. I did rock climbing. That's me on Vasquez Rocks outside of Los Angeles. And I should have had safety equipment, and I didn't. It was so dumb. Man, the things you do in your 20s, stupid. But I also climbed a lot with safety equipment, which was better. Do that. Do that. Safety. God was very nice and gave us a kitten named Tove, who I got to have as a little lap cat to be at home with me when I was just home by myself a lot because of being at home. And Tove is very nice. Tove is Hebrew, means good, not great, which is fitting. It's fitting because Tove is good. She's so sweet and nice to me and is a good lap kitty, but she's mean to visitors, especially men. She hates men, and she will scratch and bite and hiss and growl at people. So she's not really a great cat, but she's so nice to me, so I like her. And then this year, in August, we got to add Sally to our house. She is a mini dachshund, and she's smaller than Tove. She's just this itty bitty little dog. She's not a puppy. She's 8 years old, but she's just so little. So we have 2 little lap animals now, and they're great. So we just love them. How much time do we have?
Okay, we can probably go to questions.
Well, I had a couple things I wanted to say.
Okay, go ahead and say it.
So one other thing that is really cool is that God totally used me being at home in awesome ways to grow my faith. Like, if I hadn't have been at home, I wouldn't have had so much time to just be in the Word. Sherry brought over a Bible study material and committed to come over once a week and talk to me about it, since I couldn't go to a Bible study at first. And that was so great because it got me started studying the Bible. And then once I was feeling better enough, I started going to a Tuesday night Bible study at Terry Knight's house that I still go to now. That was 2016 when I started doing that. So it's been years now that I've been a part of that Bible study. And because of that, I got to know different women in the church, and I got started doing women's ministry because of getting to know all these different women, because I had time to get to know people. And then because I got to know different women, I got to know Shauna Hernandez. And then Shauna asked me to help with high school group. And because I got started working with high school group, I got started teaching the Bible at high school group. And I discovered that teaching the Bible is my favorite thing in life. I love teaching the Bible. And the reason why I love teaching the Bible is because I grew to love the Bible because I had so much time to read and study the Bible, because I was disabled, because my body couldn't do other things, because I couldn't be busy with other things, because I was so dependent on the Lord, because I just couldn't do stuff. I couldn't. And God was like, here, stop doing other things. Just do this. So it was a good thing. This last picture here is the 2 of us. This is our family. We don't have kids. My MS makes it sometimes very difficult for me to even take care of myself. So we decided that it's probably not a good idea for us to add children. That would make it difficult for me to take care of more people if I can't even take care of myself sometimes. And so we've decided that this is our family. I think that the animals count as part of our family. Blake says animals aren't part of a family. They're just animals. He would not allow them in a family picture either. And I was like, why not? That'd be cute.
Okay. Now, any questions?
Yeah.
I guess I could leave up the picture.
Yeah.
One random question for detail. You did an internship for World Impact. Did you stay with anybody and Did you say to anybody while you were there?
Yeah, so that house that I lived in, there was 4 other women who were living in that house. The thing that was kind of lonely about it is that they were all serving in different aspects of the ministry. So 3 of them were teachers at the Christian school, and then one of them was part-time at the school and part-time at a different church plant. And so their hours were all significantly different from my hours. And also just they weren't at the same locations as me. So I just didn't see them hardly at all, even though we were in the same house.
Okay. Yeah, when Stephanie and I were first married, we stayed with a couple, Chris and Chris, who were a part of like the theological seminary. And we had no idea who they were, but it was World Impact. So,
Yeah.
So anyways, it looked like a similar house, but why not?
Yeah.
Cool.
I was just wondering how you worked out your relationship with your brother.
Yeah. So when I was in Los Angeles, I really felt like God was calling me to forgive him. And I called him and had a conversation with him about it. His end of the conversation was pretty minimal. We hadn't ever been all that close. The other brother was the best friend brother. So, in general, the oldest brother and the youngest sister I'm not very close with, but the middle
But you,
ones were
for
pretty
you,
close.
there was closure in the phone call.
Yeah.
Okay.
When did you decide to go into counseling, and what do you do now?
It was actually when I was working at the camp. We had a guy, Bob Dorsey, came up to the camp one year, or actually a few years, and it was the first time I'd seen someone who was a counselor who seemed normal. Growing up, I thought I didn't like counselors. My only experience with counselors was Deanna Troi from Star Trek: Next Generation saying, "Well, and how did that make you feel?" And so I thought all counselors were just fake, and seeing Bob, I was like, oh, this seems like a normal guy who actually does counseling. And I knew that I wanted to work with people. I'd always wanted that, even if it was as a garbage man growing up. So that kind of made me think, oh, maybe this would be a good choice. And so I looked into it more. And then, right after my undergrad, ended up going to Western Seminary and did kind of a slower route through that. And then after that, now I've been doing counseling for 10 years. So, yeah.
Do you work at schools, or?
Oh, I do mental health counseling in a private practice now. I work mostly with adults, some individuals and couples. Yep.
Thank you.